1916, the Battle of Verdun. The French were trapped like rats in the forts of Verdun, a town that had withstood even the armies of Attila the Hun, but whose walls shook under the bombardment of the German shells. Around 150,000 French soldiers were killed, and even more of the attacking Germans. They lost their lives to mortar shells, flamethrowers, mustard gas, human-engineered instruments of suffering and mayhem that would have seemed like science fiction decades earlier. The terror of German shelling made waiting for the next bombardment agonizing. Some French soldiers began rat hunting to pass the time and keep their nerve, perhaps to distract themselves from how much like hunted rats they'd become themselves. Soldiers drank water that they complained stank of corpses. On the 23rd of May, 2nd Lieutenant Alfred Joubert wrote in his diary, "Humanity is mad. It must be mad to do what it is doing. What a massacre. What scenes of horror and carnage. I cannot find the words to translate my impressions. Hell cannot be so terrible." A shell killed him a few days later. Pretty heavy stuff, I know, but that is the world that Amnesia the Bunker invites you to explore. For those of you who don't know, Amnesia is a series of horror games by the Swedish studio Frictional Games, and likely the only reason you've heard of a certain Swedish man who has more YouTube subscribers than the Philippines has residents. Now, to be straight up with you, I've never finished an Amnesia game before the Bunker. It's not that I'm opposed to them, and I've played a decent chunk of the first one. Maybe it's just cowardice, but I've never felt compelled to finish one. Maybe that makes you want to write off my opinion for talking about something I haven't done the background work to get a full grasp on. Personally, I feel like it might give me some insight into what makes a specific game unique as a standalone title. Plus, the series is an anthology. There might be connections, but each game tells a different story across different time periods and locations. That said, Amnesia the Bunker is one of the most powerful pieces of anti-war art I've ever encountered. I'll be diving into that later in the video. First, I want to lay out some of the basics about the game. From what I can tell, the gameplay of the Bunker really switches it up from the previous installments in the series. To boil the game down to its most basic, you play as a French soldier in World War I, trapped alone in a bunker while a monster is hunting him. To escape, you have to explore the bunker to find a way to blow your way out of a sealed tunnel and return to the surface. That premise might sound basic, but the gameplay is anything but. The monster is hyper-attracted to sound but avoids light. That means keeping the bunker lit by powering the generator with fuel that you can scavenge as you explore. You become beholden to keeping this thing powered, and each fuel can lasts shorter than it feels like it should. There also is a finite amount of fuel you can get in a single playthrough. You have to plan your missions accordingly, because when the fuel supply is exhausted, it's lights out, and there's nothing keeping the monster from getting to you. Having the generator run out in the middle of a mission is terrifying, made even more so by your only light source being this era-appropriate dynamo flashlight that you need to charge by hand, the noise of which also attracts the monster. This might sound stressful, but it's incredibly fun. There are so many explorations where I got by in the skin of my teeth, and seeing the generator close to empty when I got back to safety was quite the adrenaline rush. The generator isn't the only mechanic though. You see, you start out with the central part of the bunker to explore, and as you play, different wings of the bunker open. Maintenance, the prison, the arsenal, the soldiers' quarters. In this way, it's sort of a micro, open-world Metroidvania game, where you get tools like a wrench or a set of bolt cutters that lets you access a part of the bunker that was previously cut off. Leaving the safety of the save room is already such a gamble, so when you don't bring an item you need or don't have enough space to grab a new item, that gamble becomes effectively worthless, and any items you waste or health you lose is the cost of that mistake. You have to form a plan in your head each time you leave safety and plan accordingly, while also being able to make quick decisions that typically involve some sort of sacrifice. Also, unlike other Amnesia games, you get an actual gun, this nice little revolver you can dual wield with your flashlight. Don't feel too secure though. The gun is mainly used as an absolute last resort or as a way to blow open locks or wooden doors in a pinch, more on that later though. You can find traps throughout the bunker that will hurt you and instantly alert the monster to where you are if triggered, some of which are very, very hard to see. Others are connected to doors, so you have to decide whether triggering the trap and alerting the monster to immediately access the door is worth it, or if there isn't some sneakier way to open the door if you keep exploring. At some point, hordes of rats with glowing eyes will descend on the bunker and can be found feasting in groups on the bodies of your fallen compatriots. One rat alone isn't a threat, but in groups they can take chomps out of you. If a group of feasting rats is blocking your path, what do you do? Take a running jump over them, which will lead to you getting nibbled on at least once? Use some of your precious resources to scare the rats away, but likely attract the monster? The rats are like a Hydra head. Each time you kill one, another will take its place before long. In true survival horror fashion, there's plenty of notes and photos to collect, some of which offer tips and hints and others expand the game's story and lore. I like that the main character's notes are voice acted and that they actually gave him a French accent.
Augustin's bunk is empty. I went looking for him. He wasn't in the mess, nor being seen by Dr. Jasinski.
I was worried they'd pull a Chernobyl and make his voice actor British, but the Cursed Island doesn't make an appearance here, thankfully. You can also collect dog tags from the corpses you find. Some of these have locker codes on the back, which you use to open lockers and obtain notes and items, which further humanizes the grisly cadavers you find as actual people. Some are missable, but without trying too hard, I was able to find all the dog tags in one playthrough. Don't worry, no spoilers with the dog tag codes. Frictional Games made the codes different for each playthrough, so you can't cut corners. Needless to say, the gameplay is so much more involved than running from a scary monster and solving puzzles. It requires a perfect mix of making snap-second decisions and planning ahead, managing your inventory, taking mental note of locked doors, and weighing sacrifices with rewards. The game constantly reminds you to experiment and try new things. Chances are they might work. When I got stuck and super frustrated, I realized it was because I wasn't being creative enough. I wasn't gaming the system the way the devs wanted. As for the design goes, the bunker is appropriately gloomy and shadowy. I really love the designs of the individual items. Everything looks very era appropriate and derelict, like it could snap or fall apart at any moment. As for the monster, I mean, he looks scary. He's way more scary when you only catch small glimpses of him, and like all monster movies, he becomes drastically less scary once you've seen him too many times. That said, I didn't see him head on until about an hour into my 6-hour-long campaigns, so they are fairly reticent, but once you spotted him a couple times, the magic wears off. I did find him especially scary when you could only see his bulking shape silhouetted in the dark. That's not to say the game stops being scary when you become too acquainted with him. There's plenty of other things hiding in the dark to threaten the dryness of your pants. More than anything, the sound design was the scariest part. I think scary sound is way more important than scary visuals. It's why when I was a kid, I'd cover my ears instead of my eyes when a horror movie trailer would show up on TV. The sounds of the monster gurgling and scraping around unseen is absolutely horrifying, not to mention the various unknown noises you'll hear while exploring, when you accidentally knock something over and pray to God the monster didn't hear. Now to talk a bit about the plot without any major spoilers yet, you play as Henri Clement, a soldier in the French army in July 1916, the same time the Battle of the Somme began and the slaughterhouse of Verdun was still taking place. The game begins with you running through the trenches guided by your best friend Augustin Lambert, who saves your life. Later, on patrol, you find Augustin's body in a mysterious crater above the bunker. You give him some spring water nearby and carry him home, before you wander into a German ambush and get knocked out. You're out for some time and wake up later with amnesia. Get it? The bunker is now abandoned and notes reveal that a monster has hunted down nearly all your fellow soldiers. Later notes reveal that the monster began stalking the bunker when construction went too far into eerie Roman tunnels surrounding the bunker. Driven mad with terror, the officers cravenly blew shut the exit to the bunker and fled, effectively leaving the rank-and-file soldiers like you to distract the monster as they made their escape. Your only chance of escape is to blow open the closed-up exit with dynamite, though that's much easier said than done. You end up needing to explore basically the entire bunker before you can escape, which forms its own open-world microcosm, with the save room as a hub world and the other wings of the bunker separate zones that each have their own unique design and gameplay mechanics. The prison is literally carved into the rough rock. The soldiers' quarters bear sign of the haunted gaiety that soldiers once enjoyed on their off time, with the remnants of unfinished card games and an eerie tune playing on the radio. The arsenal is lined with barred doors and iron netting, and maintenance, well, that's where the monster lives. This gives me the chance to talk about the game's single greatest strength, why I believe Amnesia the Bunker is a uniquely fantastic game, the setting, and the themes it so beautifully communicates. So the setting, and I think at this point even saying this sentiment is cliche has become a cliche in itself, is a character in its own right. No, forget about that. The setting is the monster you're running from the bunker. The rat monster is only an extension of the setting, the probing eye of the bunker itself. The setting of a World War I bunker is genuinely perfect for a horror game. The orange sodium lights, the claustrophobic dirt walls and ceilings that could cave in at any moment, the squeaking of ravenous rats, the hissing of unknown machinery, the death rattle of shells shaking the dust from the walls, the corpses, all the blackened and festering and gnawed corpses you encounter that for life in a bunker are commonplace. But the most terrifying thing about the setting is that take the monster out and the setting is real. Actual people lived through this, in places exactly like these, where the corpses of friends were a common sight and explosions were constant reminders that they were out there, that they were coming, that they wanted to kill you. Our great-grandfathers and grandfathers were in places like these. Mine were. Maybe even depending on the part of the world you live in, your father was in places like these, or, God forbid, dear viewer, you yourself were. You can play a haunted house game and be scared, but as long as you don't believe in ghosts, you know that nobody's actually been there. The same isn't true for the bunker. And you know what I said about the setting being real despite the monster? Well, that's not exactly true. The monster was real. Soldiers felt the specter of death around every corner, the claws that could drag a friend or yourself away into the blackness. Georges Duhamel, a combat medic at Verdun, wrote, "A short time ago, death was the cruel stranger, the visitor with flannel footsteps. Today it is the mad dog in the house. One eats, one drinks besides the dead. One sleeps in the midst of the dying. One laughs and sings in the company of corpses. And even if you avoided the monster's claws, you might become its agent, its conduit, even long after the war is over." The theme of this game is drilled into you by the setting. War is hell. War is fear and horror and blindness and darkness and death around every corner. So many moments in my playthrough illustrated this. Like when you encounter the only still living soul in the playthrough so far, a bound and hooded German prisoner wailing to himself that the monster is coming. When he hears you, you can hear the relief in his voice, only to then hear the agony in it when he realizes your footsteps are moving away from him, when he realizes that help isn't coming, that even in the bunker, hunted by a monster, he is still somehow an enemy, an alien with a foreign language that marks him as one.
Schließ das wieder! Bitte! Bitte!
You release him in the end, but things don't end well for the poor German soldier. We're near the end of the game when you finally access the pillbox and get your first view of the outside world. The view is bleak, but it's still glorious in the chance of escape it offers. The trees and fields and normal life in the distance. You take a second to breathe it in when you start to hear strange noises in the distance and your health starts to deplete. The Germans are shooting at you. Your first view of escape and freedom, what's supposed to be a moment of hope, and your fellow humans are still trying to kill you. You want to shout at the top of your lungs, "Please, a monster is chasing me. I'm not fighting the war anymore. Please send help." But they won't understand you anyway. Just like you didn't understand the German prisoner. You're not a person anymore, just a moving dot whose uniform and language marks him as something to kill. You have no choice but to retreat back into the tunnels, back into the darkness. And even the gun, the universal symbol of the glory of fighting in war games, the symbol of power and heroism. However, the gun can't even hurt the monster. If you shoot it, it offers you a couple of moments of reprieve only. The sound is so deafening it rings in your ears, and if the monster is far away, rest assured he will hear the gunshot and come. I almost never wanted to fire the gun, and every time I had to, I dreaded it. The symbol of power doesn't mean much when the moment you fire, you have to run and hide in a closet. The issue of the gun perfectly captures why Amnesia the Bunker is such an incredible piece of anti-war art. Typically, games about war communicate ideas like heroism and glory, the pleasure of killing, presented in a bundle of nationalism and bloody patriotism. Not to shame you if you like them, I do too. It's just a game after all. But Amnesia the Bunker shows what is likely the truth. War is horrifying. While shooting a gun in other games makes you feel powerful, in the bunker I never felt less powerful than when I had to shoot a gun, because I knew what the gunshot invited. Try really hard not to be killed. Kill others if you have to. And if you're very, very lucky, you might get to go home. I'm going to wrap up the plot quickly now, so skip here if you want to miss spoilers. As you advance, you find out that the Roman ruins neighboring the bunker house some sort of cult with strange and barbaric rites, with promises of being able to access a new plane of existence. I like this plot point, honestly. Use of Roman cults for something malign and mysterious reminds me of Macken's The Great God Pan, or Lovecraft's The Rats in the Walls. As the killings begin, a few soldiers are seduced by the cult and desert, with one especially zealous deserter ripping out his own eyes. The ruins themselves are pretty cool, with Roman statues and wall reliefs. There are also these really creepy silhouette-y shades you'll occasionally see, which were very unsettling. That said, I don't love the sci-fi elements here, like the floating humming rocks or the allegations that the cult continued into modern day, but maybe it connects to other games, who am I to say? In the tunnels, you kill the fanatic deserter and loot his shotgun. Now here's where the real game begins.
Headshot. Monster kill.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
In all honesty, the shotgun isn't a Deus Ex Machina monster killer. It's more like a more efficient way to open doors. You also piece together how the monster came into being. Remember that night that Henri found his best friend in the crater? Henri wanted to get out of patrol duty, so he tricked Augustine into going instead. When Augustine doesn't return, Henri is racked with guilt. When Augustine is found by Henri is when the killings begin. Remember that gamer girl bathwater you give to Augustine? Well, it doesn't seem to sit well with him, and the malformed rat monster who's been hunting us is, you guessed it, Augustine. Your best friend who was only in the wrong place in the wrong time because you tricked him out of being too lazy or cowardly to go on patrol. I love the personal guilt angle here, but I don't know if I loved how vague the game leaves how you actually tricked Augustine. I don't know, maybe it wasn't a note I missed. That said, I think the other Amnesia games end with a sort of you were the bad guy all along twist, so I like the red herring of Henri's guilt, only to realize later that it was from an all-too-human failing rather than some grand betrayal. In all honesty, the story beat of the monster being Augustine is predictable, but really cool, and tied in beautifully with the themes. War has literally turned your best friend into a monster that you don't even know anymore. You were able to access the crater again, where you get Augustine's final dog tag, as well as a toy bunny he brought for his son. You might be tempted to send the Squishmallow to your favorite streamer so that she can display it in the back of her room, but hold on to it for now. Eventually, you're able to blow your way out of the bunker, but end up in the sanctum of the Roman cult and come face to face with Augustine. There's no escape here. Throw him the bunny and he'll get distracted enough, then blow him to kingdom come. Even when you become a monster, in war your last shred of humanity can get you killed. Finally, you can escape the bunker. You force your way out through some rocks and tumble into the same cursed watering hole that turned your best friend into a monster. Around you are the corpses of the officers who sealed the tunnel to save themselves, dead and festering, murdered not by the monster in the tunnel, but by the monster in the trenches, the German gunfire. Their betrayal is for nothing, only the right to die by human hands. You get one last look at the sky, see the lights of the advancing Germans, hear a voice crying, "Schnell, schnell." Quickly, quickly. Death comes quickly in the trenches. Hell is above the surface too. Amnesia the Bunker is so much more than a horror game, though it excels in that regard too. For me, it stands up there with the other great works of anti-war art, like Grave of the Butterflies, though it drives its message home with shudders and jumps rather than tears. War is hell that makes monsters of friends and enemies alike. We need more games like this, and I have so much faith in frictional games to deliver a new Amnesia title that is as terrifying, as engaging, as affecting as this. Well, thanks for watching this long. That was a bit heavier than usual. I anticipate future content being a lot more lighthearted. I plan to release this video with a word that could be considered a curse word in the title, so I hope you actually find it and the algorithm didn't bury it under Jimmy Fallon clip compilations and Funko Pop unboxings. Thank you so much for your time, dear viewer. I wish you all the good fortune in the world. I remain your faithful snuggler.